All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a couple of real people out there, just like you and just like me. So, crazy news about the founder of Rolling Stone. Just the most delicious irony in the world. Really, just incredible. It's almost like Babylon Bee material. But anyway, before I get there, here are Ghost Town's first last time. Man, I screw that up every time. First last time, the name of the album. Just go Google Ghost Towns. It's easier just to do that and leave me out of it. But I've got people thanking me for telling them about Ghost Towns. Blues, rock, soul, R&B, country, Americana. It's just insanely good. The vocals, the playing, the songwriting, the instrumentation. Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10. So go listen to Ghost Towns. Even if it's not in your wheelhouse, you like more poppy, melodic rock stuff, just go listen to it and at least acknowledge that it's really good. This is the kind of music that should be on the radio. And yes, you may hear Ghost Towns over on modernretrofm.com. It's a radio station I talk about. It's an internet radio station run by regular, normal people who love music. So go check out modernretrofm.com, playing all the music that corporate radio refuses to touch. Now, this Jan Wenner thing, holy crap, Batman. Now, I saw this first article yesterday, and I was thinking about doing a video about it. Jan Wenner blasted for comments about snubbing women, black artists, and he calls his new book The Masters. The Masters, okay? So in the old days, it was what? You had slaves and you had masters, right? So he calls the book The Masters, and who does he interview? Bono, Dylan, Garcia, Jagger, Lennon, Springsteen, of course. Oh, man. Townsend. Now, it's an interesting group of people that he interviews, but you notice something about this group of people. He's featuring those interviews with Bob Dylan, John Lennon, Mick Jagger, Pete Townsend, Jerry Garcia, Bono, and Bruce Springsteen. Notably, all of them are male, and none are people of color. In the book's intro, he explains there are no interviews with black artists because they're not part of his zeitgeist. All right. First of all, somebody who uses the word zeitgeist, right away, I'm not their friend anymore. Okay? And just, if you say, hey, Dave, I liked your recommendations. Just the ghost towns here, they're just not in my zeitgeist, dude. I'm going to say, you know what? Just, I don't need to talk to you anymore. Now, look, if you use that word, I'm not dumping on you, but right away, somebody who says zeitgeist, they're probably trying to disguise or obfuscate their feelings in a way which is supposed to be non-offensive. But the New York Times, of all places, found this hard to believe. Of course, the New York Times, they're the gatekeepers of diversity. So hence, their radar went off. And guess what? I agree with them in this case. I'm not saying that you should run the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the way it's being run, but why not put in people of different backgrounds so long as they're good at what they do? That's how most normal people in the world operate. But there is a small sliver of the world that wants to do counting. We used to call this in the old days affirmative action. I think the Supreme Court knocked that down, which is probably good because there are lots of people trying to get into college and they can't help that they were born a certain race or color or whatever, and then they're being stopped because, or somebody else is going ahead of them in line because, their skin tone was the wrong color. And this is what's happening, all right? And it's called race-based discrimination. All right, so the paper, the New York Times, asked Wenner to clarify his comments, He defended himself, noting the artists featured in the book weren't a deliberate selection, just saying it fell together. That's what he's saying, just fell together. He didn't think to himself, I'm the guy who says we need more women in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or at least I'm part of that group. Maybe I didn't publicly announce it, but it's clear that the Hall of Fame wants to put in more women and more people of color. And as far as the criteria, they're not as concerned as I am with the merits, okay? So we've seen this in recent years where you've got to go look up someone. You have to see what they did. That's how far off, in some cases, the beaten track that these people have gone to bring in artists. Now, you know, there are some people that deserve to be in, like Carly Simon and Pat Benatar. But then there were some other selections that really didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'm all for putting in women, people of color, so long as they're good at what they do and they deserve to get in. But, you know, this whole competition of who's the greatest, who's the best, sometimes it brings out the worst in people, because then they become very conceited and very egotistical. Not that these rock stars weren't already in that category. So Jan Wenner digs his hole even deeper. He says, the people had to meet a couple of criteria, but it was just kind of my personal interest in love of them, he said. Insofar as the women, now again, this is the founder of Rolling Stone, just none of them, this is what he said, just none of them were as articulate enough on this intellectual level. Holy crap, Batman. Again, I think that's 2 in this video. He argued Joni Mitchell was not a philosopher of rock and roll. Well, what doesn't matter, Jen? Because you're putting, is it Jan? No, it's Jan. I'm sorry. So Jan, you're putting people in there currently into the Hall of Fame who aren't philosophers of rock and roll. You're inducting them into the Hall of Fame. So you're going against your, you know, updated how people get into the Hall of Fame criteria. So this is fascinating. So this is exactly the opposite of what you would think. You would think he would do a book, and first of all, you don't call it the Masters. Wow. You know, the greats, you'd find a word that's neutral. You wouldn't call it the Masters. Certainly for that reason, and maybe, you know, avid golfers would pick it up and say, I'm going to read this book. Maybe I can learn about Jack Nicklaus or something. No, that's not what the book is about, man. But yeah, once you see the cover, you realize it's Dylan and Lennon and Jagger, and you go, okay. But Joni Mitchell was not a philosopher. She didn't, in his mind, meet that test. Not by her work, not by other interviews she did. Why is he dumping on Joni Mitchell so hard? The people I interviewed were the kind of philosophers of rock. Funny, he didn't interview Eric Clapton. He's a great philosopher of rock. As for black artists, Wenner acknowledged Stevie Wonder's genius, just Stevie Wonder, but noted, I suppose when you use a word as broad as masters, the fault is using the word. And what about the connotations in that word, Jan? Just like, I was going to say Jen again. Maybe Marvin Gaye or Curtis Mayfield. I mean, they just didn't articulate at that level. So because you can't have the conversation you want with them, maybe they don't speak in all of these philosophical terms. Maybe they don't use words like zeitgeist. Maybe that's the problem. If Marvin Gaye, you know, when he interviewed Marvin Gaye, if he had used the word zeitgeist, he may have been a part of a book called The Masters. All right. Maybe I should have gone and found one. This is incredible what he says in the last sentence. Maybe I should have gone and found one black and one woman artist to include here that didn't measure up to that same historical standard, just to avert this kind of criticism. Wow. He goes on to say, maybe I'm old-fashioned and I just don't give a bleep or whatever. So he's old-fashioned. So he's old-school racist here, is what he's saying. I just don't really care. That's the whole brunt of that. I mean, that to me is worse than anything I've ever read about a rock star who may have tendencies that make the New York Times or Rolling Stone upset, because they just don't talk about certain things. Doesn't mean they're racist, but it's like guilt by omission, you know? So updating this story, it gets even better. Update. Jan Wenner has issued an apology following controversial comments he made about black and female musicians. On Saturday, Wenner said in a statement, "In my interview with the New York Times, I made comments that diminished the contributions, genius, and impact of black and women artists, and I apologize wholeheartedly for those remarks." Now, he actually did do this. Unlike when somebody who is just minding their own business and liking the stuff they like makes a comment and they say, well, it sounded kind of racist that you said it this way. And there was no intent. Wenner here really stepped in it. I mean, this is stuff that I don't know how you recover from. And to that point, there's another update here. According to Variety, Rolling Stone magazine founder Jan Wenner has been removed from the board of directors at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after his controversial comments about black and women artists. Wow. So, good. And you know why it's good? Because Jan Wenner doesn't like anything good musically. He just doesn't like, I mean, yes, he interviewed the masters, and other than Springsteen, yeah, I can say all of those people are interesting, but you have to put Springsteen in there, because that's the philosophical choice, because Bruce is a philosopher on rock and roll. But now maybe all of these bands that people went out and bought the records for, bands like Foreigner and Styx and Kansas and REO Speedwagon, all of whom deserve the Hall of Fame. I mean, if you're going to put Duran Duran into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? I like Duran Duran, but no way is Duran Duran more important than any of those bands. And Jimmy Buffett, who recently passed away, not in the Hall of Fame. Burton Cummings, the Guess Who, they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Throw Randy Bachman in there too, because obviously he was part of the Guess Who, and he had this little band called BTO that he was in. They're not in the Hall of Fame. And there are many, many more. Okay, everybody has their choice. The band America is not, because they don't represent the zeitgeist. They're not part of the zeitgeist, man. So now that we've removed the guy who is the zeitgeist gatekeeper, maybe we'll see some changes at the Hall of Fame. I doubt it, because I think philosophically everybody's on the same page. And again, the hypocrisy here is this institution is saying we need more women. We need more people of color. But it's not a merit-based system. It's more that we need to represent these categories because of politics. That's what this is about. It's all political. And people who get on me for talking about politics, when you get at this level where you're saying this person is the greatest in their field, or they should be recognized for greatness, but yet you look at their catalog, you look at their body of work, and you say, that's ridiculous. We know why this person's going in. And they may be a decent kind of middle-of-the-road selection. And some people, quite honestly, I will send the list off to people, when they announce it. And it's mostly, face palming. Like, really? And they didn't put all of these, like all of the aforementioned things that I mentioned. They continue to just say, nope, sorry. But they'll put in somebody that was big for 3 years, in the 1960s, or supposedly had influence. And you have to do a real hardcore Google search to not only find them, but then to really get into their bio. And, oh, yeah, okay, I can see, why this person might go in. But you're really, like, being, I don't know, accommodating to them in the sense that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt where there should be no doubt. If they're going in, they deserve to go in. It's a slam dunk. It's an easy selection, and there are many omissions out there. I always talk about Jim Croce as being this ginormous omission. And each year that goes by, I'm like, it's ridiculous. I mean, the guy was a giant, and then his life was cut short, and his influence and all of the artists that came later, it's staggering that he's not in the Hall of Fame. That's just another, I mean, these just pop into my head every so often, and I've done videos, the Jim Croce thing, I've done several. I think a lot of people just find it weird that I want Jim Croce to be in there so much, but I don't know. It's just on my heart. And this guy, Jan Wenner, good riddance. Good riddance to him. You know, it's funny because these people just ate their own. This is one of their own. But how do you excuse comments like this? I mean, people get on certain rock artists for saying things like 50 years ago or 40 years ago, and they take it out of context, and then they blow it up, and then they create this narrative out of it. In this case, there's nothing to take out of context. There's nothing to blow up out of proportion. It's already way out of proportion. And yeah, it's good riddance to Jan Wenner. We need some people who like popular music that we grew up listening to be part of this Rolling Stone / Rock and Roll Hall of Fame selection process. There are a couple of good people over at Rolling Stone, but they still don't decide. They don't set the tone for the publication, which is unfortunate because I think they'd have more credibility and they'd have larger readership too. People wouldn't expect to get slapped upside the head, not only with the music, but also with the politics. That's another thing. So anyway, here are Ghost Towns. First Last Time. You got to go listen to this. This is great. This is the kind of music that people should be talking about as far as a continuation of a great tradition of music in this country. And we don't hear it on the radio. You know, we hear about all of these obscure things that we're supposed to grab onto, and this stuff that's been on the radio for the last 30 years that sucked 30 years ago and still sucks now, hasn't gotten any better. In any event, folks, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you can help me out via Patreon, I appreciate the support that I have over there. But at some point, there's going to be a collision between the truth and this platform. At some point, there's going to be a collision. And I want to be able to be independent if that happens someday. And I sense that as the days get darker and the rhetoric gets more heated and there's more censorship, I'm betting that at some point I'm going to be a casualty of that. I'd like to say no and think to myself, this isn't going to happen. So anyway, if you support the channel, you're supporting the continuation of this, regardless of what happens on this platform. So again, I'm trying to articulate it, right? Unlike Jan Wenner, who couldn't articulate it, but I think you get my zeitgeist, all right? So anyway, folks, thanks for watching. God bless, and we'll see you soon.